No matter how many years of experience, the majority of managers have never been properly trained to be a manager. Oh, you're so good at this, we're going to throw you into a manager. Okay, well, that's like saying, hey, you're so good at coding, we're going to go and have you be an engineer, architect. It's not the same thing. It's not HR against AI anymore. It is HR with AI. And I think HR, we have a very crucial moment in time where HR can really own this.
Welcome back to another episode of the Organized Chaos podcast. I'm your host, Nahat Kerala, and today I am thrilled to have a truly exceptional guest joining me on the show. Meet Gwenevere Crary, the founder of Guide to HR and the host of the Scaling with People podcast. She's a powerhouse in the HR world, and she isn't just another HR consultant. She's a strategic visionary who is reshaping how we think about people operations in the startup ecosystem. Guinevere has the credentials to impress any seasoned HR professional, and she was recognized as the 2020 Executive of the Year by the National HR Association. But what really sets Guinevere apart is her forward-thinking approach to AI-enabled HR strategies and her deep understanding of really the unique challenges that startups face as they scale. Through Guide to HR, she helps founders and HR professionals navigate everything from the founder ego trap to building sustainable cultures that go beyond hustle mentality. Today, we're diving deep into Guinevere's journey, the biggest mistakes she sees HR professionals make when working with founders, the critical challenges startups face with their people strategy, and her predictions for the future of HR in our AI-driven world. Let's jump right in. Guinevere, welcome to the show. Happy to have you on here. Very excited for this conversation, given that I was on your show earlier, and that was an amazing conversation. So I love it if you could share a bit more.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely. Thank you. So I love it if you could share a bit about yourself and really what got you into the world of HR so our listeners can learn more about you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I'm excited to be here as well. Yeah. So my HR path was not straightforward. I actually am an actuarial mathematics and management engineering student, got my degree and fell into HR as a compensation analyst. And I'm like, oh, what is this HR thing? I'm kind of interested. And I was very lucky to have a lot of wonderful HR leaders and partners that could help me kind of guide me and show me what HR is all about. So I decided, okay, this is what I want to do. Got my master's in HR and kept growing my career. But yeah, I kind of started from that perspective. And then over the years, I had the privilege of leading people operations from 0 to 100 in high growth startups, navigating the global expansions and markets, and even transforming some of the established organizations that had outdated structures and tools and systems. My heart in HR is 100% in tech. It's the HR tech stack. How can we make that be as efficient, effective? How can we make it work for the employees, the managers, the leadership team, and even the board members? How can we make it be something where I'm not working for this is working for me? And I find a lot of times when I go into organizations, they're working for the system.
Oh, yeah.
So how can we make the system work for you? That's been my thing. So, I built my reputation along that, but also with that focus still being both like deeply human, right? So focusing on the trust, inclusion, and leadership and development, but fiercely strategic, especially along the data and technology path to support the business growth and be a true business partner. So that's a little bit about me.
No, that's amazing, and no wonder we got along, right? Because I kind of echo everything you said, and yeah, I think the HR tech stuff is something which is not talked about as much. It's a lot of times the conversation is about let's get the shiny object, the new tool, let's just slap it on there, and to your point, let's just operate the way the system wants us to operate, or the way it's designed to operate, as opposed to the other way around. So no, I think, and we're definitely going to talk about that stuff in a bit, but. No, super interesting. But Guinevere, you've been heavily involved in the AI space when it comes to HR specifically. And your company, Guide to HR, is also focused on AI-enabled HR strategy, which is pretty interesting. I'd love it if you could tell us more about what do you exactly do within the AI enablement space, and why is that something which is important and valuable to organizations that are growing?
So I actually pivoted my business to the AI enablement space because I was seeing, especially in our HR industry, this shyness and uncomfortable not quite sure how to use this. I know I need to, but oh my gosh, I'm afraid it's going to take my job. I just felt this like internal panic inside of people that I interact and engage with. And I was like, okay, how can I help them take a breath and start using it in a very comfortable way where then they can start progressing in how they're using it and seeing that it's going to be beneficial, taking off those things that they don't like to do. So I usually come in and I go, okay, give me 3 things that you have to do on a daily or weekly basis that you wish you would never have to touch again or never have to do again. All right, how can we AI that for you, right? So that's kind of like what I start with, that simple, like, step. Like for me, the biggest transformation in my life is, like I said, I'm an actuarial mathematics major. I hate writing. I still hate writing. So I'll just be honest, like give me numbers and give me coding. I'm great. But the writing, oh, Lordy. But, AI has transformed how I write because I use it as my writing partner. And how can we have that take it to the next step? If you're opposite, you're listening to me go, oh my gosh, I hate those spreadsheets and I get the surveys and I don't know how to analyze all the data. Throw it into AI, right? It can be your analytics partner. So I think that's where it's like taking that step and recognizing what it can do to help you be able to be a better person, a better team member, a better HR leader, then that's where we start. And so that's what I kind of wanted to do from the get-go. And then, progression, right? Okay, what can we actually implement? I know we talked about automation. Let's get beyond that. But you have to start with the automation, right? You have to start with the baby steps.
Yes.
What can we automate? Okay, great. What can we start building agents on? What are those agents actually doing and how are they doing it? But then you got to tie in compliance. You got to tie in, is it actually making sure your data is secure and safe? And because we're in HR, making sure that the biases don't get in there and we're still being diverse and we're not actually ending up like throwing out really solid candidates because of some biasy that's happening. So there's a lot of like trickery there. You have to really pay attention. It's not something you can just build and go, okay, I'm going to go over here now and look this way, right? Like you have to constantly be monitoring it.
No, I agree. I mean, I love that you said you really need to look at what you're trying to achieve as a business. And then you need to see how you can leverage technology, starting with, of course, like making sure you have data which is workable, automation, AI and enablement and so forth. But yeah, I echo what you said in terms of, if you look 2 years back, HR was pretty much up in arms about AI. And the narrative has started to shift pretty quickly. It's actually something I talked about in one of the previous episodes about how I've seen that trend change where it was HR versus AI. It's becoming a bit more as HR with AI and how do we leverage it? Because to your point, there's it's a balancing act, especially in the HR world and a lot of spaces, right? But because the type of data we have access to in the HR function is very sensitive and there's a lot of legal issues around how to use it and making sure it is used properly. But that's where the purposeful implementation of any technology, not just AI based, right? But which comes into play here. So since we're going down that rabbit hole, Gwenevere, let's talk a little bit about where do you see, so again, a lot of the conversation today in HR is about really talking about eliminating admin tasks, admin duties, right? Like onboarding things. It's stuff that HR spends a lot of time doing manually or even spending a lot of time administering, managing, and so forth. Beyond the immediate and the obvious in technology and AI implementation, what are you seeing, given your involvement in the space? What are you seeing as potential opportunities and ways in which AI can really take HR to the next level and allow us HR folks to really spend time on doing the things we were supposed to be doing in the first place, as opposed to wasting our time on herding cats and managing tasks we just don't want to manage at all?
So I'm really excited about this next phase. And again, I think that going back really quickly, the important part is building that foundation. You cannot build this next phase and have it go well for you and your organization unless your foundation is solid. And that's not just knowledge. It is the compliance. It is the data sensitivity. It is the biasness and making sure that you're testing and it's not getting delusional answers going on, right? So you got to have that be really solid before you can build on that. It's kind of like, don't build your house on quicksand and expect it to survive, right? So what I'm excited about, and I'm actually partnering with a company called Recap, and we are actually building, we haven't quite named it yet. And hopefully maybe by the time that this is posted, it'll be named, but it's basically a 24/7, 365 coach for employees and also for managers. And what I mean by this is, especially in large organizations, but I even see this in my small organizations that I've worked in, you have managers who, let's just be honest, no matter how many years of experience, the majority of managers have never been properly trained to be a manager.
100%.
They have done things really well as an individual contributor. And, oh, you're so good at this, we're going to throw you into a manager. Okay, well, that's like saying, hey, you're so good at coding, we're going to go and have you be an engineer, architect. It's not the same thing, right? You might be a subject matter expert in what you're doing, and so you can support your employees from mentoring and guiding them that way. But being a manager is a completely different skill set. And we as an organization, as a company, as a world, have never really properly trained people when it comes to that. So I find that in some of my cases where a manager's like, oh, I've been managing for 15 years. And I'm like, yeah, and you still don't know how to have a hard conversation.
Exactly.
So how can we help them and make it in a place where it's comfortable for them to do so? And this is where I see this AI coach, which is like an agent-ish kind of thing, but it's really like helping them be able to talk to the agent and be able to role play. And I don't know about you, I'm an introvert at heart. I hate role playing. I know how important it is. I push role playing on all of my managers all the time. But internally, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. But if you gave me an AI where I was able to role play and I knew that it wasn't going to go anywhere and no one would really see it, like I would probably do that more often. And so that's where I'm seeing this kind of happen. And what I mean by that is you get all the information. You're connected to your company, your organization. And, Bob comes on as the manager and he wants to help Stacy grow her career, but he's not quite sure how. He's not really sure what to do. Well, depending on how you're connected, all the tools, your emails, your Slack, your Teams, your Jira, all your tickets, all your ticket places, all your systems and tools that you have connected can see what the person's doing over time, what their role is. You have your job description, you have your performance reviews, you have all your HR data on top of that. Manager can put in, hey, I've told, Stacy, I want to help her grow in the area of presentation and communication. I'm not quite sure how to do that myself, right? So the AI can actually help. Okay, well, I see Stacy is an engineer. So maybe what you could do is have her come in and present to the team during one of the team meetings. And maybe she could present on X, Y, and Z, like what project she's working on, right? And that would help not only with the presentation, but her communication skills, yada, yada, yada. And so it can actually help the manager identify areas that they can support the employee.
Yeah.
One example. Another one could be, hey, they're following along. So what I love about Recap is it actually follows along with even your one-on-ones. It records and helps the manager. You can, depending on how you work it, you can actually have it be email that gets sent to you or update or whatever, Slack message or however you want it create. And it'll be like, your one-on-one with Stacy was great because of XYZ, but here's where you could have done better. And oh, by the way, you talked about wanting to help her grow in presentation and communication 3 months ago, but you haven't talked about that in any of your one-on-ones, right? And it could even be something where it can help prep. Hey, I'm going to have a one-on-one with Stacy next week. What should I be talking about, besides the day-to-day stuff? So it can actually help with that. Okay, take it one step further. When you're hearing me say this, are you thinking about just it's reading, right? Like how it is in ChatGPT?
Right.
Is that what you're thinking? Okay. I'm actually talking about it speaking. I'm actually talking about this screen you're seeing with you and me. And it would be Bob and then Stacy, the picture of Stacy, the picture of Bob. And it is actually like you and I are talking now. It would just be pictures. It wouldn't be video.
Right.
And it would be an actual like phone conversation.
Oh, interesting.
So you do it up.
An actual coach.
Yeah. And it's an actual coach. You can actually get on and say, okay, hey, Stacy, I'm glad to have the one-on-one. I want to talk about where we're going to improve, so how I can support you improving your skills that we've been talking about over the last 3 months. And then it'll respond like Stacy, and it can actually role play, which is really cool, which is actually something that Workato is also doing as well. And they actually demoed this. It's been about 2 months now at their Workato at Work conference in Las Vegas. And they did it on the sales side. So it was a sales coach. And I was so excited to see it because I'm like, that is exactly what we need to be building from an HR perspective. And I was sitting by the VP of HR of Ricardo at the time that they were demoing it. And I looked at him like, are you guys doing that for HR? Because if not, got to get that happening like right now. So this is where I'm seeing it be such a beneficial tool. Now, maybe some of you out there listening might be like, well, that's my job, right? Especially as a business partner. And I would say it's not going to take your job away. Here's where I'm excited about it. It's going to actually help the managers who are uncomfortable, no matter what kind of trust you build with your managers. There are people that are just going to be uncomfortable role playing. Again, I'm one of them, right? So
most people are like that, at least. Like, I don't think most people want to just sit there I don't think most people are going to sit there and want to role play. I mean, I've done it. I've done a lot of like where I've done role playing a lot specifically is when I'm doing like group based trainings and all that kind of stuff with managers and so forth. Like I've trained thousands of people over my career. Every time you get into role play, people shy away from it, or they try to find excuses to get away from it, or even if they do it, it's so reserved. It's not. They're making such an effort to appeal to the people who are watching, as opposed to trying to actually learn genuinely from it. So yeah, I think that's an amazing use case you're just talking about here.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I could see that, right? And I think you talked about earlier, like this transformation of it's not HR against AI anymore. It is HR with AI. And I think HR, we have a very crucial moment in time where HR can really own this. And I'm starting to see this even in my last role. I took on infrastructure. I'm starting to see more HR leaders taking on the IT, the infrastructure, because we need to own AI. And what I mean by that is owning the reskilling of our employees, owning how AI is being used, because again, we want to make sure it's safe. We want to make sure it's usable. We want to make sure that it's not biased to people, that people are having horrible employee experiences because it's being biased to them or discriminating against them, right? So from that perspective alone, we need to start being a stronger advocate of taking on and owning this area. And for some leaders like me, I'm excited about that. For some leaders who don't like technology, maybe that's not so much. Maybe that then think about how you need to be partnering with your CIO or your CTO.
No, definitely. I mean, I love that you mentioned the last piece about IT and HR convergence of some sorts, because I'm pretty sure most people who are following this space, they saw the news about the Moderna move that they did. You know, like Moderna, very well-known company, right? They collapsed IT underneath the people function. And to your point, it is a bold move, right? But also there's a lot of opinions around, hey, is this the right idea or not? But also it kind of takes me into the next, I would say, phase of this discussion is the HR and the people leader themselves. Given everything that's going on and the changes and disruptions that are happening, I'm one of those people who thinks that the traditional HR person is obsolete. Like there's no going back to HR from 5 years ago. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'd love your take on what do you think are the competencies, skills, whatever you want to call them, that the new age HR person needs to have in order to be successful and be able to really execute on these possibilities and you know, these kind of different examples you're giving of what the future looks like. What kind of HR person do you need to be able to actually lead that kind of transformation, as opposed to the compliance heavy, admin heavy function that a lot of businesses really are not very fond of these days?
Yeah. Well, maybe aging myself, I would say that, you know, as I grew in my career, unfortunately, this might be the wrong answer and people might cringe when I say this, but unfortunately, I never really focused on the business side of the organization I was working at for quite a long time in my career, because I was so buried in the admin, the compliance, the employee relations, like all of those things, right? So I would say the transition I'm seeing is that the focusing on business. What is business? How does this business make money? What is the strategy behind this? How can HR, how can the human factor and the people behind it actually help the company be successful in those goals to achieve what they're trying to do short and long term? Those were all things I never thought about until I got higher up in my career, probably 10, 15 years into my career. And I think now people who are 3 to 5 years into their career. That's what you need to be thinking about. You need a couple years of basic HR, but you also need to start transitioning into the business side, and maybe MBA is the right approach, but learning what the business means, understanding how to talk to the CFO. What are all the financials and understanding what that means? And what are your product goals? Are you a product? Are you services? Like understanding that is going to be key to being a good HR person and becoming a great leader in the future. And I think that's where I see it going. It's going to be more about that business operations than HR admin.
No, yeah, I completely agree with you. This is something that, and you said you might say something cringeworthy. I think I've had my fair share of very cringeworthy statements, which are very contrarian to the general HR community. But my take on this has been that HR for the longest time, and not out of malice or anything, just out of the nature of work, is the job itself. Once you're past that general build phase and standing up operations, let's say you got in your tech stack, built in your processes, you have the foundation built. The work starts transitioning into a repetitive kind of laborious admin heavy operation, especially as your organization grows. The more headcount you add, the more the volume there is. And I mean, let's be honest, most organizations, especially the types of organizations you and I work with a lot, right? The scaling small startups that are growing and exploding. HR isn't exactly the function that everyone earmarks funds for to support as the company grows. It's one of those functions where by default, you're expected to operate at maximum efficiency, sometimes even to breaking point before, once you start waving the white flag is when you might start getting some support here, which by that alone just buries you in the day-to-day operation. But I love what you said in terms of you need to first of all understand your HR fundamentals, because if you don't understand them properly and you don't spend time in executing them, your ability to understand how you translate that into business impact is a little flawed. And I've seen this a lot with people who have moved into the HR function without having any experience in it at all before. And I'm sure you've seen this where some companies, as they're growing, someone sort of inherits that position from one of the folks in the organization. But also on the other hand, people who remain just buried in the tactical side of things, that's the classical, hey, well, HR doesn't have a seat at the table and we're not taken seriously. Well, it's because you've failed to really show how you can deliver that impact. Now, to talk a bit about that from your perspective, Guinevere, what is some advice you have for HR folks who are working, in small scaling startups, and where that startup today, HR is not considered that essential strategic function that is actually going to enable us to succeed? What is some advice you have for these folks who are in that position, and how can they actually get the HR function to be a function that is considered as an enabler, as an essential part of the business, as opposed to a necessary evil they have to deal with?
Yeah. I would say the first step would be to stop and really step out of yourself and out of the day and be able to kind of look down and how are you presenting yourself? HR, you might be a department of one, so that's why I say yourself, but how are you presenting HR? How are your peers and the leaders, whether if they're your peers or a level above, how are they perceiving you? Because I think that is where, even in my HR career, and I see it now too, we still do not have strong education in how we communicate as leaders from an HR perspective. And I will say, I hate to, again, cringeworthy, but I think, men and women, we speak differently. And I think that there's a lot to do with how men end up growing a bit faster in some areas than women because of the way that what words we choose and how we present ourselves. And so I think that really is a moment for you to kind of just step back and think about, reflect on how you're presenting yourself in the HR department. And then ask your peers, hey, how do you see HR and how do you see us flipping the tide here to be a better partnership for you or to be to be able to help you grow in XYZ? Knowing the business, going back to it, knowing the business is going to be the key, right? If you don't know why your business does what it does, how it makes money, where it's going and why are we going in that direction?
Yep.
you're not going to be able to have that conversation, right? But if you understand, hey, we've decided that we're going to go all in on creating this product. Okay, great. That means most likely that means we're going to need to speed up recruiting and efforts and getting higher talent and growing our engineering and product team to support that, right? Or, hey, our product's pretty good, but our sales is not great. Great. How are we going to beef up the sales team? What do we need to do? Do we have a sales enablement process? So it's really becoming a business advocate. And this is why I think what I said earlier is going to be so crucial. It's not about knowing HR. It's about knowing business in general. And you think about operations like a COO. I also see that there could be an opportunity where CHRO and COO merge together. Because if we're doing our job correctly, we are the COO. We are organizing and understanding the business operations in a way that we're bringing the people function into that section, into that area of the business.
No, yeah. I mean, that's amazing that you said that. And I cannot agree more with the point that you made is not only do you need to understand the business in terms of, hey, what do we do and how to make money? But I think you need to understand the cogs and how everything fits together. Like if one action in department A happens, how does that impact department B? How does that even impact our product launch? How does that impact our revenues? You have to understand how everything interconnects together, because something that I always remind HR people of is the access to data that you have in the HR function is as good as the financial department. Because I mean, if you're a people leader, you have access to finances, you have access to payroll, you see all the data that really interconnects the company. And if you understand how to look at it and to assess it and analyze it, then yes, you have a lot of information that other functions generally do not have and other people in the organization do not have. You become, to your point, an operations enabler, not only someone who's working on the quote unquote HR stuff that most people, let's be honest, when you say HR, most people are really not interested outside of the HR function. They're interested in, okay. And I love the question
it's become the new personnel, right?
Yeah. Oh God.
Back in the day, again, not to age myself, but personnel. We don't call ourselves personnel anymore.
Exactly. And I think one point you mentioned in terms of taking a step back and talking to these leaders and stakeholders, it not only how do they see HR, but what does success look like for them in terms of an HR function that enables them to do their jobs better? That just gives you the recipe for success, because there's usually two sides to that coin, right? There's the perception and what the expectation. The perception with HR a lot of times is not 100% accurate because, you know, you and I know this. HR generally there's a core set of things we do in every organization, but then it changes from company to company. Even the person heading the function, based on the skill set, they might take on different things. So, but also the expectation is, well, if you're expecting something from me as a leader, it's great also to know what that is, but also align on what is the possible and what do we need to do and how do we partner together to reach that objective. So that's how you be a great partner. So yeah, I love that you said that.
But I'll also, can I add one more thing too?
Yes.
Because I think, you know, if I was sitting here at one point in my career and listening to myself, I'd be like, okay, great, I've tried that. It's not working. Mm-hmm. So the other thing too, I would say is, especially in a startup environment where every hire, no matter what level, is key, but especially as you get to the leadership hires, there may come a point in time, and I have experienced this myself, where leaders are being hired and you're like, this isn't the person that's going to fit the current culture we have, and it's going to have some impact, and you might clash with them. And maybe there's a point in time where you have a couple leaders where you just, no matter how you try to repair that relationship, it's not going anywhere. Maybe even there's a point in time where the CEO or founder or whoever is the top dog, president, whatever title you want to give them, you've kind of lost traction with them. Yeah. I think honestly, and right now the market's not great, but I would actually recommend thinking about a shift, a change, because there comes a point in time as an HR leader that you can no longer effectively do your job to support the business growth, the culture, the employees, and everything else we need to do if you don't have that trust and that relationship with those leaders. And it's a hard truth. And sometimes it's your fault. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a mixture of both. But at some point in time, when that is like beyond repair, you are going to be thrown into a admin role that's going to probably piss you off. And so leave now while it's positive. I've been told in the past, it's always good to leave a career when you're at that positive high note. I've never had that opportunity, but man, I do look back and go, I wish I had done that. So I haven't learned that lesson myself, but hopefully your listeners will.
No, I love that advice because, I mean, what you're saying is the hard truth. In a lot of cases, no matter how good you are as an HR practitioner, as a strategist, as you could have been someone who has really taken companies from zero to exits before, and then you land in this one organization where the leadership team around you isn't the right one that necessarily even believes in what you're doing. They're not advocating for it. They have different ideas, which, you don't align with. I agree with you. There needs to be clarity and an awareness of when is the right time where, okay, this is a lost cause. I need to move on because this team just isn't the right team to take us to where we need to go. And a lot of times HR people get attached to, look, but we want to make this better. They form relationships with the organization, the employees, especially if early on you help hire a lot of these people. There's a sense of guilt sometimes that I've heard from a lot of HR people, like, but
yes.
we brought these people in 6 months ago. I mean, yeah, it's normal, especially because you're kind of the face of the organization, especially in the early stages when you're bringing in people. So it can be really tough, but there needs to be a point in time where you kind of draw a line in the sand. So yeah, I love that advice. So Guinevere, this has been an amazing conversation. We're sort of out of time here, but I kind of want to give you a chance to tell our listeners, like, what is the best way to reach out to you? Those who want to, talk to you, connect with you, listen to your podcast. What is the best way to reach you? And tell us more about that stuff.
All of the above. Yeah. So obviously LinkedIn, there's not a lot of Guineveres out there, but LinkedIn, I'm open. Love to connect. Just, connect and let me know you heard this podcast, and we'll be happy to, learn from each other. That's awesome. One other thing I want to talk about with AI is I've actually created an AI assessment tool. It's a very simple 2-minute free tool. And now, I don't know if you've actually taken it, but what I love about it,
but I haven't taken it yet.
Oh, yeah. Okay. What I love about it, I mean, I'm biased. I created it, but is that when you get done, you don't just get your score. There are 4 or 5 areas within the assessment. You'll get an individual score on those areas, your overall score, and a simplistic but customized roadmap that tells you what next 3 steps you could take to improve and enhance the AI within your org, within yourself. So take it. It's totally free. We'll give you the link. That's one way. It's also on my website, guidetohr.com. And I have my podcast as well that you were on, Scaling with People. So go and check that one out. It's focused more on the founder side of the business. I have all kinds of different subject matter experts for the business. But hey, going back to the fact that I said you need to know business, that's a great podcast too, because you hear from marketing, sales, operations, finance, all the different areas that you need to grow a business. So that could be a great way to kind of start learning from those subject matter experts to hear about. I've grown. I mean, I'm 20 plus years deep into this area, and every time I get a guest on, I learn from them. So check it out there.
No, I appreciate you sharing all that. And yes, I will include links to all of that in the show notes. And yes, I agree with you. I love coming on your show as a guest, but also I have been a listener as well. And yes, a lot of amazing information. Specifically, for founders and even HR people, I think, because we're always talking about how you need to understand the business. That is one of the great ways you can do that, because to your point, you're listening to a lot of perspectives and experiences around what's worked, what hasn't, and sort of the challenges that they face when growing companies. So amazing. Guinevere, this was a great discussion. Thanks again for making the time, and looking forward to some future sessions.
Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it. And thanks, listeners.